What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition to Sit Down Saturday. So I was looking through some of the news recently and I realized that there's been a lot of Menasor news, a lot of third-party Menasor news, which made me say, when was the last time that we talked about Menasor? I know we did one, so I looked through my catalog and I found it, the Menasor Menace, and as it turns out, it was a year ago almost to the day. And I was like, well, that makes sense. It might be time to kind of readdress this in some way, shape, or form. So that's what we're going to do today. Housekeeping-wise, I don't really have anything to go over. The bulkhead review was kind of received appropriately, and I'm filming this before the Dummies hits. If anyone was concerned, I'm not quitting. I'm in this till the end. But I think it's an interesting discussion about the idea of quitting. I've been hearing it more and more. I think it's hard to kind of stay committed when the releases are so few and far between for the G1 Masterpiece Collection, so I thought it was a conversation worth having. Everybody enjoying The Mandalorian? I hope I am. I get to see it tomorrow. I told you guys that I got a video coming that covers everything that I do here. That's still in the works. I'm just not there yet, but soon it will be out. If you know what I do, then you can just skip it. If you don't know everything that I do, then it might be worthwhile taking a look at. So let's get down to business. So one thing that has popped up since then has been the Magic Square Stunticon set. This is a Legend scale G1 styled Stunticon set. Now, I don't have any interest in Legends class figures other than just thinking they're cool from afar, but I think they look amazing and I'm probably going to get them. Which should take us out into a second point. And that second point is, when we last did this video, I said I was going to get the DX9 set for combined mode. I said I was going to get the X-Transbots set and put them in my office somewhere. And I said I was going to get the Fanstoys set for my robot mode. Here we are a year later. I'm getting two sets of X-Transbots, one with the G1 heads and one that are standard issue cartoon heads. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with them. I'm getting two sets of Fanstoys, and I'm not exactly sure why. I'm just doing it. I just do things. And I'm still getting the DX9 set. So I went from getting 2 initially, to 3, to 5, to 6 now with the Magic Square. I'm probably going to get them as well. Silly. I'm a complete and utter imbecile. Now, last time we said that we were going to leave Rising Force out of this. They had just started to tease stuff, and here they are again a year later kind of refining their tease. So now we are going to talk about them. Here's what I know. It's pretty much one guy that's behind this, and that always sets a soft spot for me. Like, I like to see the little guy win, you know, and I wish him the very best. I got to see kind of the finished stuff before I make a decision and the price point and all that, because I don't know what I'll do with all of these Stunticons. But I know he's been very active with the fan base trying to communicate. I applaud all that kind of stuff. We've kind of seen his drag strip and his Motormaster, and we've seen the Motormaster go through some changes, and I think those changes are for the best. So let me tell you what I do know about this set. I do know that the vehicles are going to be real-world representations of the vehicles. That's a big deal to him. I also know that the truck is going to perfectly scale with MP10, in his words anyway. I know that the cars come in at 17 centimeters, which is a little over 6.5 inches, and that the Motormaster is going to come in at 26 centimeters, which is about 10.25 inches. This puts that set pretty much in scale size-wise with the X-Transbots set. Now, the combiner is supposed to be 45 centimeters, which puts the combiner at 17.75 inches, which is in somewhere between the X-Transbots and Unique Toys combiner size. And he expects the first figure to be released in January of next year, or perhaps even earlier. I hope for the best. I hope to get the opportunity to look at one at the very least. I have seen some changes. The feet on Motormaster have made some changes. There's stuff that I've seen that I'm like, I don't know, man, like some of the facial expression stuff and everything, but it's all very, very preliminary stuff, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until I see something in hand. I think it's very hard today in third party to be a new company and have a big impact. However, I think Transform and Roll Out did it. I think Magic Square did it. So it's far from impossible. It's just hard. You gotta be on your A game. Let's move on. The X-Transbots. Now, since we last spoke, they only had Breakdown out. Since then, they've put out all 4 Carbots. They've also put out some G2 versions, I believe, and they've also put out one with the G1 head that I looked at recently. But no Motormaster. And we got reports that their Motormaster was going through some design changes. Since then, I believe he's gone through at least 2 significant design changes. I can only imagine that this is because it didn't properly work the way they would hope it would have worked initially, or they were trying to keep up with current competition. Either way, I applaud the effort, because if it's not up to par, they should redesign it, if they can, if they have that ability, and that's what they're doing. So I applaud the effort. Nothing like that sets my spidey sense off to a abandoned ship. It just says, okay, well, they really want it to be right. We should be happy for that. We have to trade in time for quality. I can do that. But let's talk about what he did. So this is the third video kind of about Keith's approach here. These figures came in at a cheaper price point because he was trying to crush the KOs of his product. And he did it. He crushed it. We haven't seen anything of it. He killed it. He got it the out of here. And good on him. I like it. I like those moves. It's aggressive. I respect that. All 4 bots have come out and been fairly well received due to price, but it's also partially to do with paint, presentation, sculpt, and build. They're pretty well done things. Some are done better than others, as is the case with all things, but it's a pretty good set. We just recently saw their Motormaster sort of make a resurgence, as well as the combined form, and I'll tell you, when I first saw images of this, I was like, oh boy, this does not look good. I actually got a text from a buddy of mine who was like, hey man, we haven't spoke about how bad that Menasor looks yet. All I can say is this. The simplicity doesn't help the presentation of that figure. And when I first saw it, I was turned off as well. But I saw it in person at TFCon, and all I can tell you is it looks better in person. Still doesn't look like the greatest thing since sliced bread, or whatever the greatest thing was before sliced bread. Shout out to the folks that know what I'm talking about. But it doesn't look as bad as some of the pictures would have it look. One of these things that I found is with larger figures, when you photograph from the top down, it never does them as much justice as you do from the ground up. I found this with combiners. I found this with City Bots. I've also found it with Hot Toys. And I think part of the problem with the Menasor pictures we've seen is he was on a lower shelf and a lot of the pictures were pointed down. I'm not excusing it. I'm not making excuses. I'm not apologizing for it. I don't care. But it honestly looked better in person. It relies on a heavy parts forming element. This has rubbed some people the wrong way. I'm not sure what they were expecting, having looked at the pictures initially. It was obvious that it was always going to rely on a heavy parts forming element. The successful combiners do. That's a fact. It's Gotham City's fact, man. So I'm holding out hope. I don't have any reason to kind of panic. And I'm hoping that it hits before Chinese New Year, as I'm going to guess it will. We also recently got pictures of Capone from DX9, their take on Motormaster. And there's been some obvious pushback. Once again, the heavy parts forming element where you really don't even need the figure for it to stand there, which I think is ultimately fine. Who cares? As long as it looks good in the end, who cares? It's going to obviously be more heavy, more solid once you put him in there. That's all that matters. I'm good with the structure doing it. Now, I will talk about the problem. The trailer looks stupid. It looks stupid in full length. It looks possibly even worse when you can see him doing a peekaboo from inside of it. It's not his best attribute by far. They won't be my alt mode set. I can guarantee you that. But it looks clean. It looks sharp. There's an element of sophistication, I think, in the sculpt of this one. But since our last video touching on this stuff, they've only released one other figure. Now, it seems like their Motormaster is coming very soon, but 1 year, one figure. That's crazy. Now, I can understand that they were going through redesigns with their Motormaster, but we probably should have got Drag Strip and Dead End, which I don't even know if we've really seen images of. But people are being critical of Motormaster's feet, and I get it. I mean, nothing's perfect. You know, they made some sacrifices. That's a sacrifice they were willing to make, and I get it. I get the pushback. It doesn't bother me that much, but I'm not a super tuned guy, so I'm willing to make some sacrifices. People have been critical of the face sculpt. I'm more on board with that criticism. I don't think it looks as great as some of the other offerings we've seen. And there's some proportion issues as well, but some of that can be misleading in photographs, so I'll wait till I have them in hand for that. It also comes with that giant bug weapon thing. I think that's a nice touch. And we've seen pictures of it juxtaposed with other combiners, and just as I suspected and tried to convince you guys of a year ago, it scales perfectly with the Zeta and Toy World stuff. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So I'm anxious. I'm still looking forward to completing that set. It just looks like it's not coming anytime soon in terms of completing it. And then we've had Fanstoys release a couple figures in that time, and they've put out just as many as DX9, having only seen kind of a few prototype shots and a silhouette when we did the last video a year ago. They've since matched DX9 in terms of productivity of this line. And both look great, and it looks like they're going to use a heavy parts forming element also, as they should. How that will hold up with the weight of those figures and the skeleton, that is yet to be seen. But what we do know is that the combiner pieces are supposed to come with the last limb, elevating the price of the last limb to somewhere similar to what Motormaster was. This is problematic for some people, and I get it, but I feel like it would have been problematic had the trailer turned into the skeleton, so I feel like they were going to lose either way in that regard. It was impossible to please them all. I think it's a decent enough approach at it, and a small price to pay for being able to see whatever Ella Fitzgerald would call their black magic in order to turn properly masterpiece-sized vehicles into oversized bots in order to make the combiner scale appropriately. Don't know how they did it, but they did it. That old black magic. It's a great record too, if you're not familiar. Soulful Mag. And since then, we've seen prototype renderings of their combiners or CAD renderings of their combiner, and it looks fantastic. You know, it's all gray, it's no color shots or anything like that, but it looks on par with what you would expect from that company. It's stability that's really going to be the issue there, because this is uncharted territory for them. And the size seems to be on par. So that's a bit of an update of what's been going on with the Menasor situation. A lot of people have been asking about it. A lot of people have been talking about it. I'm curious to know, over the past year, what changes have you made in terms of where you were embarking a year ago with your Stunticon Masterpiece set to where you are now. Like, I made a change from only getting 3 sets to getting 5 sets or 6 sets or whatever it is I'm doing. So I'd be curious to know if you have changed at all, or if you've remained constant. Let me know what it was a year ago, and let me know if you know what it still is today. Next week, I will be back for Sit Down Saturday with no house cleaning to show you an interview that I had with HTB Toys. Now, I did that a week before this one, but this one kind of feels a little bit more time sensitive, so we're going to get this one out first. But in that one, I go over some of the house cleaning from the week before. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You'll catch up. But it's an interesting interview. I think the interview itself is like 13 minutes, and then the uncut version, which is like 40 to 50, will be on Patreon this month as well. So if you want the extra sauce, you can hear it there. If you just want the nuts and bolts, it'll be right here on the channel. All right? Hope that was helpful, or at least informative. A lot of changes with these sets over the course of a year. A lot of changes to both the sets and to the landscape as to how the sets are being released. So that, to me, is what's interesting about this. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.